Well, a lot happening in federal politics this week. The conservative leadership race continues to move forward. Trudeau's government will be releasing the federal budget this week. And could the feds make a third vaccine mandatory? Well, here to discuss it all is our federal political correspondent and Toronto Sun columnist, Brian Lilley. Brian, thanks so much for joining me once again today. Great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Brian, the federal budget will be released this Thursday. And even though we have a Liberal government, you're calling this Canada's first federal NDP budget. Why is that?
It was a little while ago, one of my colleagues at Postmedia, John Ivison, said that Justin Trudeau has become the first NDP prime minister in Canadian history. And that was before the coalition agreement with Jagmeet Singh. And he said that because Justin Trudeau has been moving his party, his Liberal Party, away from the center where the Liberals normally sit, more towards NDP style territory. Well, now that they have this deal with the NDP, we know that there's going to be an awful lot of spending in areas like trying to establish a national pharmacare program, a national dental care program, trying to solidify the childcare agreements. Essentially, they're going to be a federal budget that's mostly about provincial jurisdiction and social programs. That's going to be an awful lot of it, which really makes it more of an NDP type budget than any Liberal budget I've ever covered in the past. And I've covered about 20 odd of them over the last 22 years. And this is going to be the most distinctive in terms of how the Liberals have operated in that time.
It should be interesting, should be historical. Now, you mentioned the coalition. So, well, there's been a lot written for and against this NDP Liberal coalition. The latest public opinion poll shows that most Canadians do actually support this. So does that surprise you, Brian?
It surprises me how high the support is. About 63% say, yeah, I'm good with this. Now, it's not a question of, is it legal? Is it illegal? Of course, it's legal for parties to do this. In fact, in our system, whoever is prime minister is the person who has the confidence of the most MPs in the House of Commons. That could be someone who draws support from any number of parties. So yes, it's legal to do this, but does it sit well with them? Well, 63%, according to the latest Ipsos poll, say that yeah, they're fine with it. Now, will it be good for the country and will it lead to good policy? That's a different story. See, 63% is higher than the NDP and Liberal vote combined. About a quarter of Conservatives say they're good with this deal. Maybe they just like the stability. We don't know. But when they're asked again, okay, will it lead to good or bad public policy decisions by the government? That's when things change. And at that point, 52% say this will be good for the country. That's just about a point or so higher than the combined vote of the Liberals and the NDP. 48% though say, no, this is going to be bad for the country. So that reflecting, of course, the Bloc and the Conservative and the Green voters on that side. So it is a split in terms of, yeah, I'm okay with the deal, but Canadians are divided on whether it's good for the country.
Mm-hmm. Now, Brian, you think this will be another big spending budget with another whopper of a deficit. So isn't that just driven by spending on COVID and falling government revenue during this time?
Well, that's been a lot of the narrative over the last couple of years as you look at government spending. The last deficit announced in the 2021 budget, I believe it was somewhere around 380 odd billion. The year before, it had been about 360 billion. That's for the deficit, but about 100 billion or more, well, actually just more than $100 billion in each of those years had nothing to do with COVID. It was extra spending not related to the pandemic. And when you look at the government's regular fiscal updates, they're actually have been bringing in more money than they did before the pandemic. So government revenues aren't down. Are they enough to keep up with the pandemic spending? No. But as I said, about a third of the deficit spending wasn't related to the pandemic. The Trudeau Liberals are committed to going on with stimulus spending, even as the Bank of Canada, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, bank economists elsewhere are saying that the economy is actually moving along and doesn't need the stimulus spending. One of the worries is that will lead to extra inflation. We're already dealing with the problem of inflation. Everyone sees prices going up at the grocery store, the gas station, housing, everything. Well, if the government is putting more money into the system, that could drive more inflation. That could lead to the Bank of Canada saying, oh, we've got to stop inflation now. So we're going to hike interest rates. So then your mortgage gets more expensive. Maybe your line of credit gets more expensive. So there's a lot at play and a lot at stake here. But I don't expect them to bring down spending in any dramatic way, even as they try and wean people off the COVID support measures that most Canadians would say needed to be in place during periods of lockdown and economic slowdown.
Now, Brian, of course, the world's eyes have been on Ukraine. The Trudeau government, of course, has been under pressure to increase defense spending due to that conflict in Ukraine. So should we expect to see that on Thursday as well?
I think we will see that, and the government has been telegraphing that in some of their budget leaks. As I mentioned earlier, I've been at this a long time, and you watch the leaks and who they go to and where they go, and Canada's place in the world was leaked out as one of the themes of this budget. That will entail, we're told, some increase in defense spending. Now, here's what you have to watch for. Will it be immediate increases in spending, or will it be over the next 10 years, the government of Canada will spend X number of dollars on defense, and then you look and it's all back-ended in years 7, 8, 9, and 10. I wouldn't be surprised to see that sort of thing. But there have also been signals that the government is prepared to finally whip out some fighter jets, as Justin Trudeau once said, and they're going to look at buying the F-35 more than a decade later than the federal government should have, but they have said they're going to do it. So watch for how quick the spending will take place, where it takes effect. Is it on the infrastructure and equipment and the people that the military needs, or is it in some feel-good measures that are more in line with the direction this government's going, which is not military strength, but diplomatic measures disguised as military spending?
Now, keeping with the budget, so one of the themes of this budget will be the green economy. So there's a major oil and gas project waiting for approval. Will that project get the green light, you think?
I'm really not sure. This is the Bay du Nord oil and gas project off of the coast of Newfoundland, and it would be the biggest deep water drilling expedition in Canadian history. This is a major project, but when you look at how the government has treated the Alberta oil patch, for example, not very well. You look at even how they treated the proposal for Energy Saguenay, which would have taken natural gas from Western Canada, run it through a pipeline to Quebec to establish a deep sea export terminal to send Canadian gas out of Quebec to Europe. It would have been a boon to Quebec. They still turned that down. So I'm not sure that they're going to approve it. On the other hand, you look at how they're able to say that they're doing well. Part of it is, well, the price of oil is up. We know that helped the Alberta government balance its books very quickly. The federal government doesn't do as well when the price of oil is up, but they do see increased revenue. And so will they look at this Bay du Nord project and say, you know what, times are good right now for us, we should approve this project and move forward with it? Or are they going to stick with their green blinders on and say no to it? I would lean towards them saying no to that project. This is a government that has come out with their climate plan and said it will be illegal to buy a gas-powered vehicle by just over a decade from now. Look, the world's moving towards electric vehicles, and we see that not just due to government mandates, but consumer choice as well. And if you've been to the pumps lately, you know why.
Yeah, exactly.
But this government goes beyond that. So, I think it'll be ideological.
That was a very ambitious plan of theirs, too. Brian, let's talk about vaccines for a minute here. So the federal government is talking about changing the definition of fully vaccinated for COVID-19 to include a third dose. So is that for all Canadians or just for their employees?
At this point, just their employees. And it's important to note where this is coming from. It's not coming from Public Health Canada. It's not coming from Dr. Tam. It's not coming from NACI, the Advisory Committee on Immunization. It's coming from Treasury Board. Treasury Board is the government department that's in charge of the public service. And of course, we know that the Trudeau Liberals promised in the last election they would mandate all staff had to be vaccinated, even working from home. Well, now they're saying they might mandate a third dose. They've said that they will announce this by later in the week. The public sector unions already talking about it, already bracing for it. Does that mean that you, if you're not a federal worker, will have to get a third dose? I look at what local and provincial public health officers across the country have said. Here in Ontario, our Dr. Moore was asked about that, and he said he's not moving in that direction, and for some solid reasons. Even if you're fully backing the idea of getting your third booster, he said there's too many people who have two doses, but who've also had Omicron lately. Now, if you'd have Omicron, you shouldn't be getting your third dose for 6 months. So if you make three doses fully vaccinated, you're going to exclude them even though they've got protection because they also had an infection. So there are medical reasons not to go in this direction. But again, this is a government often driven by ideology rather than facts.
Interesting. Okay. Now, Brian, the Conservative leadership race continues to move forward, of course. Candidate Leslyn Lewis is the first to submit all paperwork and get on the ballot there. But Brian, you're saying that Pierre Poilievre is looking like a true front runner who might be the hard one to beat. So why are you saying that?
Just the crowd size. I mean, congratulations to Leslyn Lewis, and I think she'll do well. She surprised a lot of people in the last election campaign. She was the first to get the 500 signatures, I believe it is, and $300,000 into the party. But she is drawing good-sized crowds. Any standard leadership race, those would be great-sized crowds. But Pierre Poilievre is drawing crowds of 1,000 in Ottawa, 1,200 for a noontime rally in Windsor, Ontario. He's going to British Columbia later this week and then Alberta next week. And I'm expecting big crowds again when you're consistently seeing in big cities and small towns, hundreds, if not more than 1,000 people coming out for his rallies. You have to wonder if he's clicked onto something. Now, the important part is for him and his campaign, is he turning those into memberships? Because he could have 1,000 people at every rally. If he doesn't sell them memberships and then get them out to vote, it's all for naught. And the other guys could be having smaller rallies, but selling memberships and getting people out to vote. That's how you win. It's not crowd size, but that is an indication that he's doing very well. And my understanding is that, yeah, he is converting a good number of the people coming out into new members. And if he's able to deliver them, given the crowd sizes that we're seeing, this might be a walk away come September when they announce it. But that's a long way out. Candidates have until April 19th to register, and people have until June 3rd to buy a membership to vote for the candidate of their choice. Voting will take place by mail over the summer.
That's those deadlines coming close for sure. Should be interesting to see what unfolds there. Now, Brian, the federal Liberals have introduced a new bill that would see tech giants like Google and Facebook be forced to pay for the news content that they use. So how would that work?
They're trying to follow a bit of the Australian model tailored for Canada, and that would see an arbitration system go forward where, whether it's Bridge City News or the Toronto Sun, where, I have my day job, it is saying, look, if you are using the news content of these organizations, then you have to give them some of the ad revenue that you're getting from dealing and posting in their material. There's been long been a cry from news media organizations across the country that Google and Facebook, or now called Meta, Facebook and Instagram together, they've changed their corporate name, that they suck up a lot of the digital and online ad revenue. And a lot of it is based on content created by other companies, and that revenue should be shared. There have been attempts at trying to negotiate a settlement between news organizations and these companies. That hasn't happened. What the Liberals are proposing now is a lot less heavy-handed than what had been proposed before. The former Heritage Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, wanted to get in there and have government regulate absolutely every part of it. This is saying, okay, we're going to force you to come together. If there is no agreement, we'll bring one forward, but we need you to work together to sort this out. So it's probably a good thing. News organizations want this. Google and Facebook are not opposed to it necessarily, but they want to make sure that it's done in the right way. So we'll see this play out over the next little while and see if it helps with the future of journalism.
Okay, well, Brian, thanks so much for joining us once again. It looks like we are out of time, but we always appreciate having you on. Brian Lilley, federal political correspondent and columnist for the Toronto Sun. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.